We move on to our next caller.
Yes, thank you, Susie. Coming up next, we have a question from Dave regarding the copay plan. Dave, you're now live on the line. Please go ahead.
Hey there, and thanks so much for organizing the call and just for your insight and advocacy on behalf of the industry. Just wondering what you think might happen with respect to the copay promise that the Liberals had in their budget now that we've got a new provincial government with Doug Ford and the PCs.
So let me take a stab at this, and then I'll turn over to Justin and to Joe for their commentary. But it's actually more than a promise now, because that was part of the budget bill, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was part of the budget bill that was passed at literally at the 11th hour, just before the writ was dropped for the election. And so that technically, that Liberal promise to remove the copays and deductibles is technically law of the land and set for implementation. Unless something changes, it's set for implementation in August of 2019. What that implementation is going to look like, we don't know yet. Nothing has been done in that regard. There's been no discussion as of yet. As I mentioned earlier, only just now has government reopened their phone line, so to speak, to engage with stakeholders. So these are going to be parts of the discussions that we will bring in terms of what is the plan. But right now, still a little bit of a question mark.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything you've said. I would only say that there is risk, given what we've seen with the OHIP Plus announcement. The question that they're going to be asking, is this the investment that we want to make? Is this the right investment we want to make? I think from our perspective, we need to make sure that whatever decision is made, that money is directed into pharmacy and into patients. And whether that's through continuation of the policy and the bill that was passed, or if it's some other mechanism, we want to make sure that it stays within patient care and in the community. But it remains to be seen where they'll land on that in this particular time frame that we're in. We're still very early.
I would only add from a kind of a legislative perspective, Alan is right. That measure was included in the 2018 provincial budget that was tabled and passed by the Liberals on the very last day of the legislature before the election started. Having said that, it is now law, but the new government does have the ability and the authority to either repeal that budget completely or amend it through the legislative process. So we are hopeful, and Justin, you spoke to the investment. I think they had costed it out at the time of $575 million. So the question to be contemplated by the new government is, do we want to spend $575 million on that, or redeploy that money to somewhere else, or reduce spending? Because this is a government that, while they've acknowledged they're not going to balance their budget in the first year or second year, that they want to by year 4. So there may be some difficult choices ahead for them, but the question is a good one. Thank you, Dave, for that. James, do we have anyone else on the line?
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave. We actually have another question that was submitted through email. It reads, as a pharmacist, what can I do to help lobby for some of these issues?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that. There's actually quite a lot that we believe, certainly from an OPA perspective, that you as a pharmacist can do. First of all, it's practicing the way you believe and we believe pharmacy care ought to be practiced. In other words, as Justin has alluded to, it's got to be about the patients. We've got to make sure that we are living and breathing the words that we are advocating, and that is providing solid patient care. And that, notwithstanding the challenges, we're doing our very best for patients. At the end of the day, what can happen with that is that you are sending a message through your patient that you are a very much valued healthcare provider, that you are an integral part of their circle of care. They themselves, the patients, can be one of the strongest advocates for pharmacy. But that said, getting more specific, you have as just like myself and Justin and Joe, we all are citizens of this province. We all have MPPs that represent our specific interests in our constituencies, and you have the ability to knock on their door and pick up a phone and to contact them and to let them know exactly what it is you can do for your patients.
Or go meet them.
Or go meet them. There really is. There are several opportunities, whether it's letter writing, sending an email to either their constituency office or to their office at Queen's Park, as Joe said, meeting with them. Probably the loudest voice that we as organizations have are our respective members, and bringing that voice, it makes it much more personal, much more, and it takes it home for the member of provincial parliament. They will hear firsthand what it is you're doing, inviting them to your pharmacy, and having them observe and see what it is you're doing on a day-by-day basis. It sounds trite, but it's exceptionally powerful.
Yeah, I mean, hard to disagree with anything you just said. I think absolutely the patient, the grassroots is where the power in numbers is, and support. And traditionally we haven't done the best job in engaging, and we did more so this last couple of years. And you can see that people are more aware of the services that pharmacists provide and more supportive of. Because when you have a service and you deliver it in a quality fashion, the patients want more of that service, and they become your greatest advocates. So to your point, engaging patients, enabling them to be the voice, and to really talk about the value that they have in the relationship with the pharmacist. Because anything that you have and then it gets taken away, you will have support and an outcry about that. So as a healthcare provider, we need to position ourselves in that positive light. And of course, engaging directly with our health officials in the ministry as well as politically. So,
I'd also add that the Ontario Pharmacist Care website is still available and still accessible, and it provides opportunities to find out more about our particular issues, and provides some of that background information that you can use in your meetings, in your letters, in your calls with an MPP.
If I could add, I love that question, because as a government relations practitioner, we often ask, how can we get pharmacists and real people out there more engaged and more involved in the lobbying efforts? So I would say to pharmacists, there's a brand new government, and historically in Canada, in provincial and federal elections, the turnover, the number of new people elected, has been about 30%. It's average 30%. This election was very much a change election. We have 60% of the 124 MPPs are first-time MPPs. That means that when it's flu season, for example, that MPP may not know that they can go to their local pharmacy. And as many of the group who just finished their term, lots of them would go to their local pharmacy and they take a picture, and it would be in the local paper. It's all good, right? Good for the pharmacy, good policy, good politics. The new people may not know. So I would say to pharmacists, because of the number of people who are elected for the first time, you might need to retrace your steps a little bit, just like the two associations who have been to Queen's Park all the time, many times on your behalf, are now going to have to retrace their steps, because we have a new everything. We have a new premier, a new minister of finance, a new minister of health. So what the associations will be doing at Queen's Park, we need pharmacists locally to do in the communities. And I like the numbers: 4,000 pharmacies, 124 ridings. That's pretty good. There really should be no riding that doesn't hear from or meet with, be it a phone call, a meeting, an email, from a local pharmacist that can talk about some of these important issues. So I love that question. Thank you very much for the question.
And it's really the power of the story. Telling the story about the patient, the journey, and how you help that patient will go a long way to resonating with decision makers, and we need to tell more stories. Pharmacists are heroes in the community to a lot of patients, and we don't tell enough of those stories.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.